I hope I'm not going to get into trouble with you, but I'm not going to talk about reform. I'm going to talk about something much more revolutionary. Let me, first of all, say what I think about reform. Reform discussions remind me of, let's say, 28 people in a boat. The Brits haven't yet jumped into the shark-infested sea. They're still in the boat. The boat's got a big hole in it. And everybody, I hesitate to use the word bailout. Everybody has got a pail, different sizes of pail, different usefulness of the pail. Sometimes the bucket's got a bit of a hole in it, like the boat. But anyway, they're all furiously trying to get the water out of the boat back into the sea. The problem is that the hole is growing. Now, maybe they can, with their reforms, bail a bit faster. Maybe they can put the level down. But basically, the boat is sinking. And that's what I want to talk about. Because I fear that our debate about reforms is disguising the much bigger problem of the sinking boat. And the sinking boat is Europe's shrinkage. Europe's aging and its shrinkage. And we don't talk about this, in my opinion, nearly enough. Let's look at the labour force. Now, everybody thinks I'm a bit crazy when I say this because they say, oh, what about high unemployment? Never mind unemployment. There are all sorts of different unemployments. The real point is the size of the labour force. Right now, there are about 240 million people of the right age to work across the European Union. If we continue immigration at its current rate, that's going to drop to, I forget the figure, somewhere around 207 million by mid-century. If we were to listen to the populists and so on, and put a halt or really curtail immigration, the size of the workforce drops to about 169 million by 2050. Now, that's removing a huge chunk of consumption, and it also means that we're really limiting growth in the European Union. A quick word on the aging. Right now, there are 4 workers per pensioner. By 2050, there will be 2 workers per pensioner, unless we do something about it. This is actually not a new problem. We've known about it for ages. 10 years ago, Felipe Gonzalez sounded the alarm bell. He headed a wise men's group, and they said, more or less, we need into the European Union 100 million non-Europeans. They won't all be workers, some will be grannies and so on. A lot will be young people and children. We want them. Well, nobody really took much notice of the Gonzalez Report. A few did. I remember Klaus Regling, now in the Eurozone mechanisms, when he was in the Commission, wrote a piece for me saying, look, our average growth rate in Europe in the last 25 years of the 20th century was roughly 2.3% a year. From 2010 to 2030, just because of the demographics, there will be a ceiling of 1.8%. After 2030, that comes down to 1.2%. In other words, while we shrink and age, we are inevitably, ineluctably going into slow growth and decline. We have to do something about this, And that's why I talked a bit about revolution, because I think we need a revolutionary mind change. We really need to start explaining to people that their living standards, the living standards of their children, depend on a much more far-sighted approach to immigration. And immigration that we can handle. Because right now, the big issue that strikes me every day is Africa. 1.3 billion Africans now. By 2050, 2.3 billion Africans. Those Africans, 2/3 of them currently live on the land, 1/3 in cities. Well, by mid-century, it'll be 2/3 in cities. And we all know what an African city looks like. So, do you think there's going to be a lot of employment opportunities for Africans? No. So what do people do when they can't get a job? They move. So we're going to see a great tidal wave of unemployed African youth going north. Unless we do something about it, unless we change our thinking, unless we start to invest in the education and the economic development of all of our neighbors. And then all boats, coming back to my boat with the whole of it, all boats will start to float on a rising tide. I hope I'm not in trouble, Maria.